It is so good to be together and light our chalice this morning. Each week we, and now I'm going to put a parenthesis here, because the we that I'm talking about isn't only the we who is sitting here in Olympia, who is sitting wherever you may be in your chairs, living rooms, wherever you might be, even in Washington State. But the we that lights the chalice when we gather to worship is a we of Unitarian Universalists all around the world. Denmark, Transylvania, Brazil, Australia, and all other countries. So even to start with the we and with the relationship, let us light our chalice this morning, knowing that when we light a chalice, we're completing a sign and a signal of our faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism. And we do so by lighting a flame in this chalice. And the symbol, the meaning, the purpose of lighting the chalice is to remind us that it signifies the warmth of this community and the warmth of the beloved community that encompasses all of us around the world. The flame of our hope. And that hope still burns brightly today as it did from the days when we became a denomination, both Unitarians and Universalists, and then in 1961. So the chalice lighting words I'm going to invite us to use are the words that I have used all of my ministry, because it distills everything into three things. I'm going to teach you, we'll show you and invite you to do the movements with me, and then we'll do it together if you're willing. Are you ready? Okay. We light this chalice for the light of truth. Ready? We light this chalice for the light of truth, for the warmth of love, and the energy of action. All right, shall we do it together? Okay. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action, because it's not enough to think, and it's not enough to love. We must take them both, put them out into the world. Thank you. And now, good morning. Good morning to you all. I'm the Reverend Dr. Sylvia Barron. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a little old 72-year-old white-haired Jewish lady who learned to speak English in the Bronx, where I got to from Argentina, where I was born, from Russian, Hungarian grandparents. Thus, red nails, red glasses, red car, red house, red wallet, red phone case. I won't go any further than that. It is so good to be here today and share some reflections on the very light topic of good and evil. In all generations throughout time and history, we have been asked to rise to the call of our times, which are fraught with struggle and danger, and this is for all times. There is nothing new under the sun, Ecclesiastes. Humans have been asked to do this from the beginning. We're not that different. Our own denomination was formed out of this struggle against oppression. And in this second term, we're called to action and reflection on the good and evil again. Because the first go-around was only a precursor, a laying of the foundations of what we're living through now, which is why I'm really grateful to be able to sing our first hymn, May Nothing Evil Cross This Door, because this hymn got me through those times, not only the administration, but COVID. And it wasn't because I was wanting to keep the evil out there. It was I wanted a reminder all the time to keep that from infiltrating in here, because we all have that possibility. It's a reminder. Let's keep it out. Keep love in, internally and externally. So, a word about language. I am a language nerd. I have been trained, I'm a linguist. Never mind. It's important, and it's important to tell you that I will be using the word God. I'll be using the word psyche. I'll be using the word numinous. I'll be using all sorts of words, right, that carry a reality and a meaning that is beyond what has been concretized as God. Its psyche, its relationship, is that which exists, the numinous, right? Not as a thing, but as Paul Tillich, process theologian, talks about, it is the God beyond the God, not the God of, right? But that dynamic soul, living reality that we experience when we behold a baby, ours, someone else's grandchildren for the first time, and there's this like, or we're walking somewhere and suddenly something calls our attention. And we are touched for the moment. And as Paul Tillich says, sometimes the veil of reality is lifted and we are ergriffen, gripped by this reality, by this movement. That's what I'm talking about. In this I-thou, the understanding in process theology that it is a mutually effective process between us and the reality. It's that same process that I used to teach when I was teaching in the doctoral leadership program. Transformational leadership with stone carving is whatever you do to the stone does back to you. It's an ongoing conversation. It is the Martin Buber I-thou. It is Sufi, Rumi's Sufi poetry that says, say, I am you, not just the you human that sees the human in me, but the namaste that says, the divinity in me sees the divinity in you. I'm going to be talking about process theology today, and you will hear about Henry Nelson Wyman a lot. Stories about good and evil, right? So as I was thinking, really giving great consideration about what stories could I bring that would help us continue this kind of grappling, and then I remembered Flip Wilson. Now, of course, right? Who else? So some of you are not even a glimmer in your parents' eyes in the 70s. And so I ask for your indulgence because that is where I was embedded. You will have stories and traditions and things to tell about artists of which I am not familiar. But I am familiar with Flip Wilson. So I beg your indulgence. If you can remember, Flip Wilson, yes, it was Geraldine Jones. Right? Now, for those of you who don't know, Flip Wilson, African-American male, right, goes on the shows as Geraldine Jones. Already gender-bending, hot pants, okay, go-go boots. Flip. And she, when she came on, she was a strong, powerful black woman in the 70s, okay? Now, Geraldine loved shopping. So every time she would go into the store and come home with another dress, her husband would say, Geraldine, you just bought 2 dresses. You said you weren't going to buy any more. And you know what she said? Can I hear that? The devil made me do it. Exactly. She had a car crash, right? She comes home. Husband says, what? What does she say? I was driving along and he came in and he took the steering wheel, she says. And so, of course, I had to kick him. Hard to put on the brakes when you're kicking the devil. But That's why you found me in the back seat of the car after I crashed it into the church. Who made me do it? Wasn't that interesting, I thought? Here's an externalized force that comes, right, and grips her steering wheel, crashes her into the church. I was thinking about the devil, right? Externalized. Now you know that I'm Jewish, so in the Jewish tradition, there is no external demonic force. There's only inclinations, moral compass. There's the Yetzer Tov, you guys get to be the good guys, okay? The Yetzer Tov, the inclination to be generous, to make sure that everybody has everything they need, enough toys, enough candy, enough pretzels, enough cheesecake, food, water, healthcare. And it's the inclination to say, I'll leave the last piece of cheesecake. And then there's the other inclination, you guys get to be the Yetzer Hara. That says, you know what, I'm really hungry. I don't care that, they're hungry. I'm just going to take what I want. I'm just going to take more water for AI centers. Can I tell you? So in the Jewish tradition, really what we're saying is there's a moral imperative. So Yetzer Hara is necessary because, as Scripture tells us, that without that moral inclination, we wouldn't be building homes. It's saying, what is the moral compass? Lovely, right? And then I went to what in Christianity and Islam is called the devil. This externalized demonic force that acts upon us, right? It's his fault completely, right? And it's to test whether you're going to obey God. So the real story I want to tell you is the story of Iblis. And Iblis in the Islamic tradition is he who becomes Shaitan, and this is his story. Iblis was created as fire, literally. He was beautiful, he was incandescent, and his only goal in life was to worship and love God. And he did it so well, so incandescently beautiful, that he was elevated to the highest and best place near God. And everything was great until God said, let me create the creation, the birds, the bees, the flowers, and then humanity made out of clay. And he called all the angels, all the jinns, called them all together. And God said, could I have a God thing, Troy? God said, all you angels, look at this beautiful thing I've created. Bow to it. Iblis says, I'm made of fire. This is made of clay. I'm here to worship you. And God says, Iblis, bow to the creation. Because if you do not, I will expel you, and you will fall from grace. Iblis! And it is said that Iblis's no reverberated throughout eternity. When he landed in earth, he was called Satan. What's the moral of this story? I'm going to leave it to you. Not too long ago, I had a dream. Thank goodness it was not a Martin Luther kind of dream. Martin Luther King, I mean. It was simply a dream of me driving along in Olympia, kind of bumping into things. A little curb here, turn the corner, ow. A little scratch on the bumper, but nothing happened. So when I woke up in the morning, I realized in the dream no one was hurt, nothing was damaged. There was just a little bit of scratching on the car. No serious damage. And isn't that exactly how it is? We bump along, we drive around, we do our best, we get scratched, we bump up against things, and thankfully and hopefully nothing serious happens. And when I woke up, I got really quiet, and honestly, I cried a little. Any of you cry a little bit when you wake up? Tender for the parts of you that are dreaming, and I woke up so tender because knowing that when I opened my laptop, I would hear some horror story, something that was worser, most worsest than what I had read the night before. And isn't that the truth? Exactly. And so I thought, okay, why is this dream coming to me now? Right? And I think it was coming to me to remind me that instead of looking at what I wasn't doing, instead of looking at how everything is wrong, what it was saying is, I, like all of us here, all of us there, so many of us in this country are trying to figure it out, to do the best we can. And what are we being called to do? What are we being called to drive through? Right? What am I being called to drive through? And I believe that what I'm being called to, what I'm offering you here today, is to learn to differentiate between the difference between good and evil. To know what each one of them is, so that I could consciously do the best good that I can, given my limited humanness. I have to be able to think about it in the ways that our ancestors and their myths and their stories have taught us about how to be humans. As you know, not just in such a time as this, but for all time. So what is good and what is evil? And now I want to talk to you about my favorite theologians. Paul Tillich, Alfred North Whitehead, Charles Hartshorne, and my beloved Henry Nelson Wyman. He's my beloved mentor of the mind, because I wasn't alive when he was writing, but in reading his absolutely academically dry, dense as dust text, I was inspired because I understood that what he was constructing with this denseness, this precision of language, was to build a structure that would hold. Some foundational something that would hold theologically and philosophically that could not be assailed. He made it tight. And what he was talking about, what he was writing about, was the responsibility of the human to be in relationship, in an ongoing creational, dynamic relationship with the creation itself. And what he calls it, what I'm talking about, is the creative event. And it's the fact that the creative event, God, that dynamism that cannot be defined, is in constant relationship with us, and we can respond to it or not. That's what the reading was about. We need one another. W.H. Auden says, when he was writing about the war, we need one another. We need one another or we die. And while I am really stressing the importance of the human to respond, Henry Nelson Wyman also knows and says that if we don't, or if we can't, and if we fail, the creation here will fail for humans. But think about it. One tiny planet. One, for us, incredible. And if you've seen those pictures and you go, oh God, I wish we can stay part of this. And maybe humans might not make it, but insects, birds, water, trees, maybe. That doesn't mean we don't do our part to make sure it doesn't happen. Stars will continue to shine whether we're here for it or not. For my part, I prefer to be here for it. As you know, I'm going to tell you, those of you who don't know, I'm deeply embedded in depth psychology, which is founded by Carl Jung. And what he says is this, and he said this in, I believe it was 1961, right about the time that Unitarians and Universalists merged. And he says, the world hangs by a thin thread, and we are the great danger because we know nothing about the psyche. What happens if something goes wrong with the psyche? Psyche can be translated into the divine, God, the transpersonal, the intrapersonal, the ground of being, the numinous. It is our ignorance. What happens if we don't know anything about the psyche? What happens if we don't know the difference between good and evil? Our ignorance is the great danger. So, in The Source of Human Good, which is Henry Nelson Wyman's book, which is I will be quoting later on, he very concisely defines what is good and what is evil. And I won't use his language too much because you'll all fall asleep. But he does say it this way. There is an absolute good and there's an absolute evil, and here are bells ringing, right, people? Absolutes? Oh no. You have your opinion, I have mine. Absolutism is not good. And I understand that, because when I'm saying there is an absolute good and an absolute evil, not I, but I who am standing on those who have said it, and we say it's absolute, others also can claim it's absolutely right to take whatever I want for my good, because Jesus said so. Or Muhammad said so, or someone else said so. And it is good that others suffer so I can have what is mine. I understand that, but I'm not backing down because I think it's wrong. So what is good? Let's start with that. Good is a good that is good for all people at all times. What is good? Water is good. Water for AI centers, not so good. Food for all, safety, shelter. Read the United Nations Charter of Human Rights. Read Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's not that hard. Babies need to be born, breathe air, nurse, or have a bottle or whatever is available. They need to know that they're not going to be ripped from their homes. That's not good. What is evil? It's not a force that destroys. It's even more insidious than that. Evil is anything that obstructs the good. Oh. Evil obstructs the good when we don't recognize also what the good is, how it is embodied. It's how we are. Wyman talks about Jesus in this way. Okay? Not the Jesus that we see portrayed now, the white nationalist Jesus with the flag behind him, or even the beautiful Jesus that others do follow who understand who he was. I don't want to diminish or make of him anything that he wasn't. It's how he's portrayed and co-opted. And this is the Jesus that Wyman talks about. He says, Jesus, it's not something good that was handed down to them from Jesus. In other words, he's saying it's not what Jesus gave them, rites, rituals, words, parables. It is something that was rising up out of their midst in creative power. That was the important thing. It was not something that Jesus did. It was something that happened when he was present, like a catalytic agent. Like a catalytic, something that constellates something in each of us. It was if he was a neutron that started a chain reaction of creative transformation. Hallelujah. I want to be that neutron, don't you? That's it. Something about this man, Jesus, broke the atomic exclusiveness. We must be broken out of our littleness. Of those individuals so that they were deeply and freely receptive and responsive to one another. Isn't that what we're doing in worship? He split the atom of human egoism. Think about it. He split the atom not to destroy Hiroshima or any of those things, but he split the atom of ego by being the kind of person that he was. Thus arose in this group of disciples a miraculous mutual awareness and responsiveness towards the needs and the interests of one another. And I take my words back. This is not dry and academic, is it? No. I'm sorry, Henry. So what obstructs us? Again from Wyman, and the book is called The Source of Human Good. He says, in 1946 he writes this. Those of you who are mathematicians, do the math and tell me later, okay? He says, it is always good at all times for all people to have clean water, access to food, health, education, safety. That is an absolute good. But what happens when a Hitler comes and provides a better good, a better standard of living? Then that good becomes an evil based on creating divisions between those who can enjoy the good and those who are the enemies of that good. More food, more water, bigger houses, bigger bank accounts. Who are the enemies in this scenario? Who becomes the enemies of this? You can have access to this part of the other. Who becomes the enemy? Anybody? Little brown children, women, people who don't fit the conformist. Do I need to say more? Anybody else have who becomes the enemy? The poor, the marginalized. And there's the division. There's the evil that he's talking about. All of these goods, healthcare, all of that, but only for the few. And who are the enemies that are keeping us from having this? See, it's not external. He made me do it. We have that choice. Evil is based on human self-interest that narrows and obstructs the good in the very name of good. Our now assailed Constitution says that we're all created equal. Our own Unitarian Universal values and principles assure us that we're all interconnected, valued, respected. And that is absolutely true at the fundamental building block of our human condition, of our humanity. We're all born out of a body that is changed by that experience. And just like process theologians don't question whether God is God, psyche, whatever you call it, they study how God becomes in relationship. How God becomes. And we must ask ourselves the same thing. We don't question that we are human. We question how we human. Human. How we human. In 2018, I was invited to go to Bogota to attend a Jungian conference where I was able to present two papers around exile in Spanish. It was wonderful because the way that I talked and the way that I am was absolutely coherent, and it was so moving, but that was not what it was about. Because the whole conference started with the Kogi shamans of the Sierra Madre, the first people, the ones who were the indigenous and coming out to show the community how they were not living in sync. And they presented their cosmogony. And here's their cosmogony. Aluna and the mamas, las mamas, were in the dark cave. Think Plato, think all the cave things. And they thought the world into being. They thought the relationship of the sun and the moon and the stars and the earth and the people's relationship, the men, the women, the children, how everything was ordered. And they thought it all into being. And we were so lifted up thinking, oh my God, this is great. And then the shaman said through the translator, so be careful what you think about when you're creating something, because you don't want to make junk. Be careful what you're thinking about when you're part of the creation so you don't create junk, living in harmony. And I thought, ooh, that's good, but it got better. In a shorter, a much smaller workshop that we did, he was telling us all about knitting and weaving, and we got to make little bracelets, and it was really moving, and the community was great. And then he said, okay, now I'm going to invite you all to write a letter about what you understood. Parentheses. As an educator, I had my students many, many times write letters about their process, and then I would send it to them 6 months later, and they could see, oh, here's where I was when the course started, transformational leadership, etc., and here I am now. And I said, oh, baby, I got this covered. I know what this is about. Right? The shaman says, write this letter for those who will read it in 1,000 years. For those who will read it in 1,000 years. I want there to be those that will read it in 1,000 years, to know that we mattered, to know that I matter, you matter. Let us live in a way where we know that we matter. Amen. So be it. Let us now release the flame. We have gathered in this beloved community to light the flame of good, that it may illuminate our hearts and bring that love, compassion, and warmth to the world. As we extinguish this chalice, let us remember that the light we kindle is within us. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, let it shine. May you go with joy. May you go with compassion, commitment, and most importantly, go with love.